everybody. So today is Saturday. That means it's time for family movie night. And today we are continuing on the classic musical month. And we are looking at Guys and Dolls from 1955. And of course, this is the adaptation of the very popular musical, Broadway musical of the same name. And it was a big deal at the time. The Samuel Goldwyn actually paid $1 million for the rights to Guys and Dolls, and this production was a huge deal that year, and it ended up doing very well. It was the #1 moneymaker of 1955. And what I think is kind of interesting is that this movie is part of a very brief window, I think just 1 year, where Stephen Sondheim wrote movie reviews. And I thought it would be kind of fun to look at his review and see how much of it I agree or disagree with. And he talks about Guys and Dolls. He was not that high on this film. And he says the two major flaws in Guys and Dolls are Oliver Smith's sets and Frank Sinatra's performance. That's the big thing that he has the problem with. And it's very interesting because he thinks that there's this combination of the real pop art style with like natural, realistic looking Times Square. And I honestly don't see that. I mean, to me, it all looks pretty like comic booky, almost like a panel of a comic book. And he says the backdrop of Times Square, the picture's most important set piece, is petrified, cute, two-dimensional mileage of signboards and neons that looks like a New Yorker cover, whereas the subway station entrances are as real as the rush hour. And there's very little time spent at the subway station in this movie, so I don't really know kind of what he's talking about, to be honest. I just watched it and I was kind of looking, and I mean, all of it feels pretty cohesive and poppy to me, but he did not like that. It says that the film lacks one of the basic elements of the stage version's charm, a feeling of New York. And I guess I could kind of see that it does look pretty backlotty. And it definitely has that like Art Deco style. It could really be any city in the country. I mean, it's like almost like a Dick Tracy kind of look to it, but it doesn't, to me, that kind of adds to the charm, not take away, which is kind of interesting, because I don't really need it to look like New York. This is I mean, it's such a silly story. I mean, it's not like this is a gritty take on the mob, the mafia and gambling, organized crime, kind of a thing. And so then he has problems with Sinatra. So Sinatra ambles through his role as though he were about to laugh at the jokes in the script. He has none of the sob in the voice and the incipient ulcer in the stomach that the part requires. And Sam Levine supplied so hilariously on stage. Sinatra sings on pitch, but colorlessly. Levine sang off pitch, but acted while he sang. So that is very, very interesting. There is something that's kind of blasé about Sinatra's performance in this, I think. And so I guess I could kind of see, but the whole movie is so slick. So I don't think that it really has like a gritty feel, this sob in the voice and the ulcer in the stomach. And every time that I've ever seen Guys and Dolls on the stage, it's always been pretty similar. These are cool, that the zoot suits and everything, and this is not trying to be like dark and gritty at all. So, and like maybe something like Chicago or something like that, like has like a little bit darker, but yeah, maybe I'm just so influenced by the movie, and then the interpretation's kind of based off the movie. I didn't see this original Broadway staging of it. So he wanted something a little bit grittier, which is just, to me, feels like just not a part of this whole property. It's very interesting. He says that Sinatra's lackadaisical performance, his careless and left-handed attempt at characterization, not only harmed the picture immeasurably, but indicate an alarming lack of professional ability. So, wow. But I feel like that Nathan's character is kind of like that. Like he's not somebody who is getting ulcers. He's like real, and maybe that's just again because I'm used to his interpretation of this character, but he is, I don't know, like I feel like Nathan is kind of stressed out about trying to find a craps game, but definitely at least as far as with Adelaide, he is kind of a sad sack in the movie. I think about it, like he doesn't really care and he doesn't want to have to change, and so it's interesting. I don't really see it as that boring of a performance, but I don't really see it as that exciting of a character. So maybe he did miss out on something, and we could have gotten something that was a little richer. I don't know. He does say that Vivian Blaine repeats her comic stage triumph as Miss Adelaide, the well-known fiancée who has been engaged for 14 years, is disconsolately resigned to being married on the 12th of never. And so yeah, I mean, she's hilarious in the movie, and does Adelaide's Lament absolutely with that skill and comic timing of a Broadway veteran that knows that part in her bones, and you can feel that.
In other words, just from waiting around for that plain little band of gold, a person can develop a cold.
I don't think that her and Snatcher have very good chemistry, so maybe that's part of the problem of his performance that Sondheim is talking about here. But it's interesting that he would rather have somebody who is off pitch and what's the word he uses, that is says Levine sang off pitch but acted while he sang. So that's kind of interesting that a lyricist like Sondheim would rather have somebody that is off pitch but acting than somebody who is on pitch but colorless in his words, which I think is fascinating. He's pretty complimentary of Marlon Brando, which I know a lot of people are pretty critical because he's not like the greatest singer in the world, but it was pretty common during this age for people to be dubbed. So it's surprising, and maybe his voice is just so unique you couldn't find a good dub. I don't know. But both him and Gene Simmons both sang their own stuff for this, all the whole cast. So that's something to be commended, and they have excellent chemistry. I think Brando and Gene Simmons, and there's some very swoon-worthy scenes. If I Were a Belle, I think is a wonderful number, really good, and she really brings out the best kind of in that number.
Well, sir, all I can say is if I were a bell, I'd be ringing.
Sondheim says that Marlon Brando is too young for the smooth, experienced gambler Sky Masterson, but he acts with personality and conviction and sings pleasantly. Gene Simmons is surprisingly appealing as Sarah Brown, a part with almost no potential, and her Havana dance is a high point of the picture. Yeah, so that's the If I Were a Belle. It's interesting because I never got the feeling that Sky Masterson is an old character. So I'm not sure why Brando would have been too young for this character. I mean, if anything, he's kind of he's making all these bets, and he's these crazy bets, and he, whether one raindrop will go down faster than another raindrop, and it seems like that's something a younger person would do. So and going through all these ladies and all these dolls. So I don't really understand why. It must have just been the original cast was older, I guess. I don't know, but that's something he has a problem with. He says her charm is immense. Both Simmons and Brando could give lessons to most of the more polished voices in Hollywood on how to act a lyric.
Into mine.
And what about you?
I've always enjoyed Brando's performance in this, but I don't think he's that good of a singer. But it's interesting it's interesting to read Sondheim, which he doesn't really care if you're acting the lyrics, if you're off pitch, if you're not that good of a singer. He doesn't care. He just wants to see the performance. So I thought that's kind of fascinating. And he says, but he does at the end, this is interesting. He says, Guys and Dolls is much more successful as a screen transference of a stage musical than Oklahoma, Brigadoon, and Kiss Me Kate. which is fascinating that he and he has a whole separate review of Kiss Me Kate where he calls out, I think it's New York Times critic. It's a letter to the editor. He wrote that he thought they overpraised it and he didn't like it, which is, it's fascinating to read. You should. But he says that it's not as good as CoverGirl, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and Singing in the Rain, which were all written for the screen. So, you know, he definitely thinks that there's something always lost in these translations from stage to screen. And we've certainly seen that time and time again, that of course, so many things, even like Les Mis or Dear Evan Hansen, or, you know, so many things that the film versions are not as well received as the stage versions over the years. Cats, of course. but yeah, I thought it was fascinating to read his review. And see, I think as far as my review, I think that this is too long. This movie is 2.5 hours long. It doesn't need to be that long. I think it could be a lot tighter. There's definitely some songs that don't really do a whole lot for me. They had the Goldwyn Girls, and so they were real excited and putting in these numbers. I could have gotten rid of all of them. I do love Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat. That's a favorite.
I said, sit down, you're rocking the boat. And the devil will drag you under by the sharp lapel of your checkered coat. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, you're rocking the boat.
Like I said, I really like If I Were a Belle, and Luck Be a Lady is fairly sedate, but it is, as far as the choreography and other things, but it's still a really great song and a good number.
A lady tonight. Lucky if you've ever been a lady to begin with. Luck be a lady tonight.
Love Adelaide. That was a new song added for the movie for Sinatra, and I really like that song a lot. And he sings the heck out of that song, at least, even if Sondheim didn't like the rest of his performance.
Adelaide, ever loving Adelaide, is taking a chance on me.
I enjoy it. I think it is an entertaining, silly little classic musical. So let me know what you think of Guys and Dolls. Do you agree with Stephen Sondheim, the great Sondheim, or how do you feel about Guys and Dolls? Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section or on Twitter. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and at rachelsreviewstheater.com. And as the host of the Onstage Blog podcast, we're having so much fun doing those. I would really love your thoughts on those. I'll put the link in the description. And if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel, would really appreciate that. And we have the Patreon group, which is the best way you can support everything I'm doing. And we have a merch store. You get I'm a Theater Girl shirts, I Love Rom-Com shirts. So check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.